What the hell do you think you're doing in my bed? Adrian Mercer's voice shattered the quiet like a bottle hitting concrete. He stood in the doorway, tall, soaked from the storm, fury carved across his features. Every ounce of his attention locked on the woman tangled in his sheets, Lila Bennett. She jolted upright, heart hammering, not with guilt but stunned disbelief. On either side of her, the twin boys, Noah and Nico, finally slept. Their breaths came slow and even, cheeks soft, limbs loose. The stuffed dinosaur in Noah's arms rose and fell with his chest. "I can't explain," Lila whispered, careful not to wake them. They were terrified. Nico started sobbing, Noah's nose. Adrian didn't let her finish. His hand flashed out, a sharp crack slicing through the room as his palm met her cheek. Lila stumbled back, one hand flying to her face, breath catching, eyes wide. She didn't scream. She just stared. Shock thrummed louder than pain as her gaze locked with his. "I don't care what excuse you've got," Adrian snarled. "You're fired. Get out of my house. Now." She stood still, palm pressed to her burning cheek, trying to steady herself. When she spoke, her voice was low, barely there. "They begged me not to leave them. I stayed because they finally felt calm, finally safe. I said, 'Get out,'" he snapped. She glanced at the boy, sleeping peacefully, as if their nightmares had dissolved. Lila leaned down, kissed Nico's hair, then Noah's. No lingering, no words. She slipped on her shoes, lifted her bag, and walked past Adrian without looking back. He didn't stop her, didn't apologize. Downstairs, Mrs. Porter turned as Lila descended. The vivid print of a hand on Lila's cheek said everything. The older woman's eyes widened, but Lila kept quiet. Outside, the downpour had faded to a mist. Lila stepped into the gray afternoon, pulling her coat tighter as she headed for the gate. Upstairs, Adrian lingered in the master bedroom, chest rising too quickly. He glanced at the bed again, scowl deepening, then noticing something wrong in its unfamiliar rightness. The quiet. He approached slowly. Noah's forehead was smooth, no frown, no restless turning. Nico's thumb rested near his mouth, his other hand relaxed on the blanket, fingers loose. They were simply asleep, not sedated, not hoarse from crying, just sleeping like ordinary 6-year-olds. Adrian's throat tightened. 14 nannies, specialists, doctors, endless meltdowns and sleepless nights. Yet this soft-spoken stranger had done what none of them could, and he'd struck her. He sat on the edge of the mattress, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face as shame seeped through his ribs. On the nightstand, a folded note waited. He opened it. "If you can't stay for them, at least don't push away the ones who will." No signature. He read it again and again. In the mirror, his reflection stared back, a man hardened by grief, strangled by control, suffocating in silence. Down the hall, Mrs. Porter stood watching quietly. "Sir," she said gently. She didn't move anything in here, only brought them in when the little one's nose started bleeding. Adrian said nothing. She stayed because they asked, not for me, not for anyone, just her. Adrian's gaze shifted back to the sleeping boys, something heavier than anger settling behind his eyes. Outside, the gate creaked shut. For the first time in months, the Mercer estate was quiet. Not with rage or grief, but something unfamiliar. A fragile, borrowed peace Lila had left behind. The silence in the house didn't feel comforting, like snowfall or pages turning in an old book. It felt hollow, unfinished, like a sentence cut short. Adrian sat alone in his study, untouched bourbon beside him, Lila's note lying accusingly on his desk. If you can't stay for them, at least don't push away the ones who will. He'd read it 7 times. Outside, dusk pulled itself across the property, the wind brushing against the windows. Upstairs, the twins slept through the aftermath, unaware she was gone. Adrian leaned back in his leather chair, rubbing his temples. His palm still tingled, the echo of that slap stamped into his nerves. He hadn't meant to do it. It didn't fit the man he believed himself to be. And yet he had. He'd hit a woman, not just any woman. He pushed to his feet and headed upstairs. The hallway outside the boys' room smelled faintly of lavender and warm cotton. A small wooden stool sat against the wall, Lila's sketchbook resting neatly on top. He picked it up. Inside, quick but heartfelt drawings filled the pages. 2 boys holding hands beneath a tree, a big house with too many windows, a figure between the twins, arms spread like wings. Beneath it she'd written, "The one who stays." He exhaled slowly. In the nursery, Nico stirred. Adrian peeked inside. The boy rolled over, but didn't wake. No whimpers, no night terrors. Adrian closed the door quietly. Downstairs, Mrs. Porter was folding napkins when he walked into the kitchen, her hands freezing mid-fold. Something in his expression made her set the linen aside. "She's gone," he said flatly. "I know," she replied. "I made a mistake," he murmured. Mrs. Porter's brows rose. Her tone stayed mild. "You don't say. She was in my bed." "She was in your room," Porter corrected. "Because the boys wouldn't sleep anywhere else. You weren't here. I was. I heard them crying, begging for her. She settled them." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I know what you thought," she said softly. "But you weren't thinking at all." Silence settled between them, heavy. He glanced at the chair where Lila had sat at lunch just yesterday. It felt like another lifetime. "I have to find her," he said finally. Mrs. Porter didn't argue. "Start with the return address on her application, Georgia." He was already heading toward the hall before she finished. Across town, Lila sat alone on a bench outside the train station. Her cheek still burned in the cool air. She hadn't cried when he yelled, or when his hand connected, or when the gate swung shut behind her. But now, tears gathered. She blinked them away quickly, not from shame, but because public crying was a reflex she'd spent years unlearning. A woman nearby watched for a moment, then silently offered her a tissue. Lila smiled in thanks, glancing up at the cloud-thick sky overhead. It was cruelly ironic. She'd survived worse than one slap, being dropped by a foster family at 11, losing her own child to illness, being told she was too soft for hard cases. But that house, those boys, had touched something long numb inside her. "What do you think of Lila?" a narrator's voice might have asked. "If you believe she's special, show her some love. Tell us where you're watching from. Someone near you might be too." The train arrived with a screech of brakes and metal. Lila stood, hand drifting to her pocket where her ticket waited. Destination, Savannah. Her heart, though, lingered in a white house in Greenwich, where 2 fragile boys had finally learned to sleep. She hesitated, sat back down. The platform lights hummed quietly overhead. The next morning, Adrian stood in his son's bedroom holding a breakfast tray. Scrambled eggs, toast with strawberry jam, a small bowl of fruit. He'd never done this before, not even once since their mother died. Nico sat up, hair rumpled. "Where's Miss Lila?" Adrian hesitated. Noah pushed himself upright too. "She's gone, isn't she?" he asked. Adrian nodded. "She had to leave." "Why?" Nico's voice cracked. "She didn't do anything wrong," Noah said, eyes narrowing. "She helped us. You saw." Adrian knelt, setting the tray on the nightstand. "It wasn't your fault," he said quietly. "It was mine." Nico studied him. "Did you yell at her?" Adrian didn't look away. "Yes." "Did you hit her?" Noah's voice dropped. Adrian's throat tightened. He gave a single, heavy nod. Both boys turned their faces aside. He stayed kneeling on the carpet far longer than comfort allowed. "I'm going to fix this," he said eventually. "I'll bring her back." They said nothing, but they heard him. Later that day, Lila boarded a city bus instead of a train, heading toward familiar streets. She went to the shelter where she'd once volunteered, needing perspective, space. A reminder that the world was bigger than one mansion, even one holding her heart. That afternoon, she taught a writing class to a group of teen girls, many technically homeless. She didn't mention Adrian or the twins. Instead, she told stories about choosing to stay when others bolted, about knowing your worth even when people refused to see it. Afterward, as she unlocked her bike, she spotted a note tucked between the spokes. It wasn't from Adrian. Just a short message. They asked for you. Both of them. Lila looked up at the sky streaked tangerine and gold, and this time she smiled. Across town, Adrian stepped into an old community center, the sun sliding low. His polished shoes sounded wrong against scuffed linoleum, like a cello dropped into a punk band. Still, he didn't falter. He scanned the bustling room until he spotted Lila at the far wall, crouched by a whiteboard, erasing crooked sentences from a lesson. A scattering of teen girls loitered in a loose circle around her, laughing, trading jokes, notebooks sprawled everywhere. Lila laughed too, her voice lighter than he remembered, still lined with grief, but unburdened for a moment. When she looked up and saw him, the sound faltered. Conversation faded, not because anyone ordered it, but because Lila's posture changed, like a curtain falling mid-scene. She rose slowly. Adrian walked forward, empty-handed, no briefcase, no bouquet, just the weight of his apology. "I need to talk to you," he said. The girls eyed him warily, one shifting subtly in front of Lila. "It's okay," Lila murmured, and the girl relaxed. Adrian glanced at the whiteboard. Across the top, in looping marker, it read, "Your voice matters, even when it shakes." He turned back to Lila. "May I?" he asked. She nodded, leading him outside to the same bench by the bus stop where she'd sat yesterday with lukewarm coffee and swallowed tears. "I was wrong," he said immediately. "I judged you, didn't listen, and I put my hands on you. That's something I'll regret for the rest of my life." Lila stayed quiet. "I saw you in my space, in my bed," he continued. "I let fear drown out truth. That wasn't just unfair, it was cruel. You didn't believe me," she replied. Her tone wasn't angry, just exhausted. "Even after your sons trusted me." "I know," he said. She looked away. "You don't get to stroll back into my life just because you finally realized I wasn't lying." "I'm not here to clear my name," he said. "I'm here because they asked for you, not a nanny. You." Her eyes softened. "How are they?" "Too quiet," he admitted. "It's like the sound's been sucked out of them." She nodded. "That's not peace. That's a wound, scabbing over without healing." He stared at his clasped hands. "I want to fix this." "You can't fix it," she said. But you can start by accepting that what your sons need isn't control, it's connection. He exhaled. Come back. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked, if I say yes, am I still just staff? He hesitated. No, you'll have whatever title you want. Advisor, mentor, partner. She lifted an eyebrow. Partner. The word hung heavy. In their care, he clarified, cheeks flushing. Lila considered him. Fine, she said at last, but I have conditions. Anything. First, no cameras in their rooms. He frowned. There aren't any. There were, she countered. One nanny told me last month. He grimaced. They were meant for safety. They teach kids their privacy belongs to someone else, she said. He nodded once. Second, they eat dinner at the table, with you. No phones, no business calls. He hesitated, then nodded again. Third, we rewrite the house rules together, with them. He blinked. They're 6. They're people, she shot back. A reluctant smile tugged at his mouth. Anything else? She inhaled. Yes. The next time you raise your hand at someone who doesn't deserve it. Anyone, I'm gone, and I won't come back. His expression faltered. Understood. She stood. I'll see them in the morning. He rose too. Want a ride? She shook her head. I'll take the bus. I'm not finished here. He nodded. Lila, thank you. She paused. Don't thank me yet. We're restarting, Mr. Mercer. This time, I'm not walking on eggshells. She turned and disappeared back inside, toward the waiting whiteboard. Adrian remained on the curb, watching her go. That night, he cleared the dinner table himself, called the boys down, and awkwardly attempted a bedtime story. He mixed up character names, voices stiff and uneven. They giggled, not mockingly, just honest. Upstairs, in their freshly made beds, Noah whispered to Nico, She's coming back. How do you know? Nico asked. Because she said goodbye, Noah murmured. Nobody else ever does. The next morning, Lila returned to the Mercer estate. The sky was brushed with peach and slate blue. Birds hopped along the treetops, dew clinging to the manicured lawn. She paused at the iron gates before they opened, clutching her worn canvas bag like armor. Inside, the foyer gleamed. Marble floors, towering chandelier, curated silence. The butler, Simon, greeted her with a stunned blink before stepping aside with something close to reverence. Miss Bennett, he said quietly. Welcome back. Thank you, Lila replied, moving past the polished calm. She heard hurried footsteps upstairs, small, uneven, echoing down the staircase. Then a shout, She's here! Nico flew down first, arms spread wide, grin stretching ear to ear. Noah followed more slowly, clutching a sketchbook, eyes bright but guarded. Lila dropped to her knees just in time for Nico to crash into her arms. Well, hello there, she laughed into his curls. We made a welcome back sign, Noah mumbled, thrusting the sketchbook forward. On the first page, a shaky drawing of her, the twins, and a house with a big heart above it. The caption read, You stayed even when you left. Lila's throat tightened. This is beautiful, thank you. Footsteps approached behind them. Adrian stood at the base of the stairs in a gray sweater and jeans, instead of his usual tailored armor, looking like a man trying instead of performing. Breakfast is ready, he said. Lila rose, smoothing her blouse. Good, because we've got rules to rewrite. In the kitchen, the 4 of them gathered around the table. No phones, no staff, just scrambled eggs, toast with honey, and fresh orange juice in sweating glasses. So, Lila began, pulling out a notebook, We're going to talk about what it means to live here together. What's fair, what's safe, what makes this place feel like home. Noah raised a hand. Can we have music during bath time? Lila nodded. Reasonable, Nico added, and no broccoli unless it's in disguise. Adrian coughed a laugh. I'll need clarification on that one. Lila grinned. We'll keep a list. But this isn't just about vegetables. It's about boundaries. She glanced at Adrian. For all of us. He sobered. Understood. Over the next hour, the boys scribbled rules with crayons. Always knock. No yelling near bedtime. Ask before hugging. Pancakes on Sundays. One story each before lights out. Lila added her own, listen first. Apologize when you're wrong. No cameras, no exceptions. Adrian added a line in neat handwriting. Make room for forgiveness, even when it hurts. When they finished, Lila taped the paper to the refrigerator with 2 cheerful, sun-shaped magnets. There, she said. The new house rules. Later, while the twins played outside, Adrian found her in the library. She was sorting children's books into uneven stacks. They've changed since you left, he said. She looked up. Or maybe they were always capable of changing, and we just never gave them space. I've changed too, he admitted, unsure. She held his gaze. I know. He stepped closer. What you did, staying, leaving, coming back, that's more than I deserved. She slid the last book onto a shelf. Maybe, but it's what they deserved. I wasn't going to let your worst moment become their lasting lesson. He flinched, then nodded. I want to be better, he said. Then start by being present, really present, not only when it's easy. He looked down, shame prickling. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? Lila's expression softened. They already have. Kids are better at that than adults. You just have to earn it daily. That evening, Adrian tucked the boys in himself for the first time since Claire died. He stumbled through a story, mispronouncing words, overacting characters. The twins giggled, correcting him. Lila lingered by the door, listening to their laughter stitch something fragile back together. After lights out, Adrian walked Lila to the front hall. I've been thinking, he began, about what you said, about not being staff, about being more. She folded her arms loosely. You're not about to offer me a promotion, are you? He gave a wry smile. No, he said. I was going to offer you a voice. She tilted her head. Go on. I want you to help me build something. Not just for Noah and Nico, for other kids like them, kids who've lost more than they know how to name. Lila's eyes widened. You mean a foundation? He nodded. Something real. You guide it. I fund it. She studied him. If we do this, it's on our terms. No press circus, no performative charity. Agreed. She extended her hand. Then we have a deal, Mr. Mercer. He took her hand. Call me Adrian. She smiled faintly. All right, Adrian. That night, as she walked toward the guest room, her room now, not just borrowed space, she paused outside the twins' door. Inside, whispers drifted. She came back, Nico murmured. Told you, Noah replied. Lila leaned against the frame, whispering to herself. I did. 3 weeks after her return, the house no longer echoed with emptiness. It buzzed with life. Breakfasts grew louder, bath times splashed, and the once withdrawn twins began to bloom like wildflowers. The rules on the fridge were smudged at the edges from constant pointing. Adrian, the formerly untouchable patriarch, now folded tiny socks and attempted ponytails on visiting cousins' hair, terribly. but not everything evolved at the same pace. Some wounds dragged behind, stubborn and slow. On a late Friday night, long after the staff had retired and the boys were asleep, Lila wandered the halls. She often did when old memories pressed on her chest. Walking helped her breathe. But tonight, something felt wrong, off-kilter. The library door stood ajar. A strip of light spilled into the hallway. Lila pushed it open. Gently. Adrian sat at the desk, shoulders hunched, phone in one hand, half-empty glass of bourbon in the other. He didn't notice her at first. "Bad news?" she asked softly. He flinched, then glanced up. "Lila, I didn't hear you." "You're 3 sips in from that bottle," she said. "Figured something was up." He set the glass down, cleared his throat. "Just an email." She waited. Silence stretched until he turned the screen toward her. The subject line read, "Custody hearing, notice of motion." Lila blinked. "For the boys?" He nodded, jaw clenched. "Claire's parents, the Whitmores. They've filed for temporary guardianship. Claim I'm unfit." "On what grounds?" she asked. He gave a bitter, humorless laugh. "Anger issues, neglect, emotional volatility, domestic incident." Lila's face darkened. "They know about what happened, about me." "Apparently," he muttered. "They've been biding their time. Now that the boys finally have some stability, they want to rip it away." She sat opposite him. "Have they been involved at all?" "Not since the funeral," Adrian said. "They blamed me for Claire's depression, for moving on too quickly, for not letting the boys grieve the right way. Maybe they weren't completely wrong." Lila was quiet. "Do you want me to testify about their progress? What I've seen?" Adrian hesitated. "I don't know if it helps or makes things worse. They'll say I rely on you because I can't parent alone. Then maybe we don't fight them alone," she replied. "Maybe we show them what healing actually looks like." His eyes met hers. "You do that? Stand in court after everything that happened?" "I'd do it for them," Lila said. "Not for you, not for optics, for Noah and Nico." He exhaled, tension easing just a fraction. "You think I can win?" She turned toward the window, staring at the faint glow of the boys' nightlight across the lawn. "You won't win if you show up as the man who slapped me, but you will if you show up as the man who changed, the one who stayed." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll be that man." The next morning, the house hummed with focused urgency. Lila reviewed her journal entries, documenting the twins' routines, emotional shifts, and the ways Adrian had started showing up differently. She gathered their drawings, snapped photos of the refrigerator rules, and tucked in a crayon sketch Noah had made. It was a picture of 4 figures under a rainbow, hands linked. No one had asked him to draw it. He just had. Meanwhile, Adrian called his attorney, scheduling an emergency meeting. For once, his instructions weren't about managing headlines or safeguarding assets. They were about protecting 2 small boys who'd already lost enough. At lunch, Lila sat with the twins under the old oak tree, cutting grilled cheese into triangles while they debated heroes. "Who would win in a race, Flash or Sonic?" Nico asked through a mouthful. "Do we have to go live with Grandma and Grandpa Whitmore?" he added suddenly, voice shrinking. Lila froze. "Why would you ask that?" "I heard Dad on the phone," Noah said quietly. "They don't like him. They said he makes bad choices, and that you're not really family." Lila set her plate aside. "Boys, no one is taking you anywhere without a fight, and I'm not going anywhere either." Noah chewed his lip. "They're rich, and—" he hesitated. "And they're, you know, white." Lila blinked. What does that have to do with anything? Noah shrugged. They said on the phone your family doesn't really fit with ours. Lila cupped Nico's chin. Gently. Families aren't built from matching skin or shared last names. They're built from who stays, who fights for you when it gets hard. I'm here. That makes me family. Nico flung his arms around her. Then you better win, he mumbled into her shirt. Lila looked toward the house where Adrian watched through the window, nodding once. That night, Lila sat at the small desk in her room, typing her statement for court. It wasn't polished legal language. It was honest. She described the boys' early days. Panic attacks, silence, how they clung to each other but no one else. She wrote about the small shifts, shared jokes, restful nights, trust returning in tiny, stubborn increments. At the bottom, she added, healing isn't neat, it's messy and slow. But inside that house, I've watched two boys start stitching themselves back together. Not because of money or bloodline, but because someone chose to stay. She printed the pages, slid them into a folder, and left it on Adrian's desk. As she turned to go, her glance snagged on the old note, still taped to a frame. If you can't stay for them, at least don't push away the ones who will. She smiled faintly. No one was being pushed away now. Everyone was fighting to stay. The courthouse smelled like polished marble and nervous sweat, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Lila sat beside Adrian in the waiting area, both dressed in subdued tones. His gray suit perfectly tailored, her navy dress simple, sleeves long enough to hide the faint scar on her wrist from that long, rough night of twin nightmares. Adrian glanced over. Nervous? She kept her eyes ahead. Only about what I can't control. Across the room sat the Whitmores, James and Eleanor, draped in money like armor. Eleanor's pearls gleamed. Her cream suit was sharp, her stare sharper. James looked less composed, knuckles tapping his cane, eyes simmering with blame whenever they slid to Adrian. They hadn't so much as glanced at Lila. The door to courtroom 5 opened and a bailiff called them in. Lila stood, shoulders squared. This is for Noah and Nico. Inside, the courtroom felt colder. The judge, an older woman with silver hair twisted into a severe knot, sat high behind the bench. Her nameplate read, Honorable Maria J. Ramirez. Adrian's lawyer, Mr. Fields, rose first, calm, practiced, but still somehow human. He spoke of Claire's sudden passing, the family's struggle to rebuild, Adrian's efforts to provide stability, consistent therapy, school support, and most notably the presence of one Lila Bennett. Then Eleanor took the stand, voice polished but quivering with outrage. We only want what's best for our grandsons. What kind of example is a man who brings an unqualified stranger into his home to raise them? A man who admits he struck her under his own roof? Lila's cheek prickled at the memory, but she kept her expression steady. And she isn't even family, Eleanor added tightly. Judge Ramirez arched a brow. Miss Bennett isn't on trial today, Mrs. Whitmore. But her presence is the problem, Eleanor insisted. Mr. Mercer can't handle the boys without outsourcing their emotional needs to someone. Temporary, unrelated, unlicensed. She has no degree, no certification. The judge turned to Lila. Miss Bennett, do you wish to respond? Lila stood and approached the front. She didn't carry notes. She didn't need them. I don't have a child psychology degree, she began. But I know what it looks like when kids stop believing they're safe. She let the silence breathe. When I arrived, Noah and Nico barely spoke to anyone but each other. They didn't sleep, didn't trust. Not their father, not the staff, not themselves. Bit by bit, they let me in. Not because I'm extraordinary, but because I stayed. I didn't run when it got ugly. I told them over and over, "You matter." And then I proved it with my presence. She met Eleanor's gaze, then James's. You say I'm unqualified, but what qualifies someone to love kids who aren't theirs? To choose them without obligation every single day, because that's what I've done. Not for a paycheck, not for a headline, because someone needed to. Judge Ramirez leaned back. Expression unreadable. Thank you, Miss Bennett. Lila returned to her seat. Under the table, Adrian's hand brushed hers, giving a small grateful squeeze. Later, Judge Ramirez addressed the courtroom, voice firm, but not unkind. This court does not take custody challenges lightly, especially when extended family seeks to remove a surviving parent. She glanced between Adrian and the Whitmores. After reviewing the evidence and testimony, it is clear Mr. Mercer has made serious mistakes. It is equally clear he is correcting them. The boys are thriving under his care, due in no small part to Miss Bennett's involvement. She turned to Eleanor and James. This court finds no sufficient grounds to remove custody from Mr. Mercer. Petition denied. Eleanor gasped, lurching to her feet. Your Honor, she started, but James placed a hand over hers. Let it go, he whispered, shoulders sagging. Lila sat very still, heart racing in her chest, face calm. Outside, in the crisp autumn air, Adrian turned to her. You saved them again. She shook her head. You did. You stayed. You didn't bolt when it got uncomfortable. At home, the twins waited on the couch, curled beside Simon as he read a comic in his deep baritone. When Adrian and Lila walked in, Nico spotted them first. Did we win? He asked. Lila knelt. We did. Noah wrapped his arms around her waist. So you're not leaving? She kissed his hair. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. That night, as they tucked the boys in, Adrian watched Lila hum them to sleep. When she stepped into the hallway, he said quietly, I've never been good at saying thank you. Then don't, she replied. Just keep showing up. He nodded, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. Tomorrow, he said, we start building that foundation. The architects are lined up. She smiled. And the name? He hesitated. The Mercer Bennett Center for Healing. Lila blinked, startled. That's a lot. It's honest, he said simply. You built this with us. She looked toward the room where the boys now slept unafraid. Maybe this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. The first board meeting of the Mercer Bennett Center for Healing wasn't in a glass tower or a hotel ballroom. It was held in the sunroom of the estate, where mismatched chairs crowded around a too-small table. The coffee was slightly burnt, and a crayon drawing of a crooked tree with the word home taped to the window fluttered in the breeze. Lila sat at the head of the table, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug, alert but steady. Adrian sat to her left in jeans and a rolled-sleeve button-down, not dominating the room, just listening, jotting notes in a leather notebook. Across from them sat 3 potential partners: Dr. Renee Collins, a retired child therapist, Aaron Blake, a foster outreach coordinator, and Marcus Hale, Adrian's skeptical investor friend. So let me get this straight, Marcus said, pushing up his wireframes. You want a haven for traumatized kids that isn't a clinic, isn't a shelter, isn't a school, and doesn't push adoption? Lila smiled. It's a third space, a bridge, a sanctuary. Dr. Collins leaned forward. Who staffs it? People like me, Lila replied. Not just credentialed professionals. Survivors. Mentors. Adults who've walked through fire and can show kids how to keep walking. Aaron scribbled notes. Funding, oversight, liability? He asked. Adrian cut in. We'll handle logistics. Lila leads the heart. Marcus snorted. And the name stays? Lila smirked. It stays. By the end of the hour, Dr. Collins agreed to serve as clinical advisor. Aaron offered agency connections. Marcus, after a long sigh and a muttered, "This is either genius or insane," agreed to bankroll the first 6 months. When the others left, Lila lingered to tidy up. Adrian watched from the doorway. "You handled that like a seasoned executive," he said. She shrugged. "I taught middle school for 3 years. Boardrooms are nothing." He stepped inside. "You were incredible." She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze rested on the drawing taped to the window. "You know," she said softly, "growing up, I moved 12 times. 12 different houses. None of them ever felt like mine." Adrian followed her eyes. "That's why this matters so much to you." She nodded. "Kids need somewhere to grow roots and learn they still have wings." Later, the twins helped her unpack art supplies for the center's temporary setup in the East Wing. Noah stacked paint jars. Nico sorted brushes by size, tongue poking out in concentration. "Do we get to come here too?" Nico asked. "This is your home," Lila said. "So yes, you help make it better for everyone else." Noah looked up. "Can we teach them our rules?" She knelt beside him. "I think that's perfect." They spent the afternoon drafting a new set of rules, this time for the center. Bright illustrations, smiling suns, stick figure families. Meanwhile, Adrian made a hard phone call. His attorney had confirmed he wasn't legally required to include Lila in any guardianship decisions. There was no paperwork binding her to the boys. But watching her kneel beside them, he realized legal definitions meant less than the reality in front of him. She was already family. He picked up the phone. "Judge Ramirez, please, tell her Adrian Mercer is calling." 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived for Lila. Inside was a letter in Adrian's handwriting. "No more temporary. No more blurred lines. You deserve the title you've already earned." Attached, paperwork naming her co-director of the foundation and legal guardian if anything happened to him. A notarized petition requested shared guardianship, with Lila as co-signer. She read it 3 times before her hands started to tremble. That night, they sat on the back porch, fire crackling. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but I needed to." She turned to him. "Why now?" "Because they deserve permanence," he said, "and so do you." She blinked away tears. "I'm not perfect." "Neither am I," he answered. "They don't need perfect. They need present, and you've never walked away." "I think you need to guard your own heart," Adrian said quietly. Lila nodded. "That's not what this work is about." "I know," he replied. "But if you pour everything in and she bolts, she's not going anywhere," Lila cut in. Adrian studied her. "People always leave, Lila. Your words, remember?" She held his gaze, the memory hitting harder than expected. "Then maybe this time," she said softly. "We don't let her." The retreat rolled on. Teens splattered paint across plywood walls, shared kitchens for group dinners, and told their stories in broken pieces. Lila offered space, not pressure. Always an invitation, never a demand, letting silence do its work. On the final night, lanterns swung over the garden, casting warm pools of light. Belle lingered at the edges, arms folded, hood up. When Lila spoke about foster homes and being too much, Belle edged closer, scowling. You talk a lot, Belle muttered. Lila smirked. So I've heard. Belle's voice dropped. I used to draw birds, back when things weren't this awful. Lila turned fully toward her. You know you still can, right? That night, after lights out, Belle knocked on Lila's door, shoulders hunched. I don't want to go back, she blurted. Not to the group home. Not anywhere. This place, it doesn't feel fake. Her voice cracked on fake. Lila stepped closer, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. Then we figure out how to make this your anchor, she said. Belle sniffed, swiping her sleeve across her eyes. As she turned, Lila added, You're not too much, you're exactly enough, and we see you. That was all Belle needed. Healing didn't always arrive like thunder or lightning. Sometimes it tiptoed in through half-open doors, carried in hushed promises, and someone refusing to walk away. It began with a headline, just a tiny square on a local news site, but enough to curl ice through Lila's stomach. Local philanthropists' youth program under fire. Staffing gaps, oversight questions, children at risk, vague accusations, heavy implications. Anonymous sources whispered about unlicensed staff, hinting that Lila had no formal credentials, and Adrian used his money to skate past regulations. Adrian exploded. Lila went quiet, rereading the article until the tablet dimmed beneath her tightened fingers. This is garbage, Adrian snarled. Someone's trying to take us out. Somebody who's noticed we're actually helping kids, Lila said softly. The following morning, Aaron called. We're getting heat from the agency, he warned. They're asking serious compliance questions. They want proof. You've got certified trauma specialists, updated background checks, the works. This isn't gossip anymore. It's shifting toward an official inquiry. Lila shut her eyes. How bad? Ugly enough, Aaron sighed. They're talking about pulling placements, including Belle. That one hit like a punch. No, Lila said sharply. She finally believes she's safe. Then you've got to push back, Aaron replied. Hard, but quietly. Strengthen every weak seam before this becomes a public bonfire. Lila hung up and went hunting Adrian. They're coming, she told him. If we don't move first, they'll strip the kids, the grants, everything. Adrian leaned forward. We'll bring in outside auditors, policy experts. I'll have Dr. Collins recheck every protocol. He frowned. But this feels targeted. Someone who knows our structure, our timeline, Lila agreed. Adrian's jaw flexed. Think it's Claire's parents? No, Lila said. They'd go loud, not sneaky. This feels closer. That night, rain hammered the windows while she combed through personnel files until her eyes burned. Then she saw it, Belle's intake packet. One signature looked wrong. The social worker's name didn't match Aaron's assignment. The scan came from a dusty agency printer they hadn't used in over a year. Her stomach dropped. Someone had doctored the file. She called Aaron immediately. This'll sound insane, but I think someone messed with Belle's paperwork. He pulled up the digital record. Wait, yeah, this isn't our original. Where the hell did this version come from? No idea, Lila said, tension in her throat. But it's planted. Aaron went quiet. Then you have to get in front of this right now. The next morning, Lila convened an emergency board meeting. Dr. Collins, Marcus Aaron, and Adrian sat around the table, unease thick as fog. Lila slid the forged intake across the surface. This is their weapon, she said. If we ignore it, they'll use it to say we're reckless. Dr. Collins frowned deeply. If an audit uncovers this, we get slammed for negligence, intentional or not. Aaron shook his head. Somebody slipped it in deliberately. They chose Belle because she's easiest to spin as damaged. If they prove we mishandled her case, they can unravel everything. Adrian stood abruptly. Then we don't wait to be exposed. We go public, tell the truth ourselves. Marcus lifted a brow. You're proposing we spotlight a forged document. That's a dangerous move. Lila shook her head. Not the forgery alone, the real story. Who Belle is, why she's here, what's actually changed. Dr. Collins studied her. You'd put her under that spotlight? Not without her consent, Lila said. She chooses. That evening she found Belle in the art room, working a huge canvas, an enormous bird tearing free from knotted ropes. Can we talk? Lila asked. Belle kept painting. They're trying to ship me out, huh? Yes, Lila answered honestly. Are you going to let them? Belle asked, still painting. Not without a war, Lila said, but we need you beside us. She explained the situation, every angle. I won't shove you into cameras, she finished, unless you say yes. Belle set down her brush, jaw tight. You told me once I wasn't too much, that I was exactly right, she said. Lila nodded. I meant it. Belle took a breath. Then let's show them who I am. They want to look. Fine. Let them. The next day, Lila stood before a cluster of reporters at the center's entrance. Adrian beside her, Aaron and Dr. Collins behind them. Belle stepped up to the microphones, shoulders squared, chin slightly lifted. My name is Belle Harris, she began. I'm 16. I've bounced through 11 foster homes in 5 years. I've been called unstable, dangerous, unfixable. Here, someone actually saw me. Someone stayed. For the first time, I started thinking I might matter. Her voice didn't shake. I'm not a file, not a cautionary tale. I'm a girl who paints birds because I forgot how to fly. Here, I'm learning again. Lila stood behind her, heart pounding with fierce pride, as flashes strobed. The questions came fast, but the narrative had shifted. Suddenly, the story wasn't unqualified staff and loopholes. It was a teenager standing upright in her own story. Once truth surfaces, it doesn't slip back under easily. It arrives carrying wings. The fallout wasn't explosive, just relentless. For 3 days, media vans loitered outside the Mercer estate gates. Some reporters yelled questions, others waited with cameras ready to catch any sliver of Belle's face. Belle refused to hunch. She walked taller. The center released a gallery of her artwork as part of their response. Digital shots of canvases filled with birds, cities, flames turning into constellations. The pieces took off online, becoming emblems of second chances. Support poured in, emails, messages, donations. Not all of it was kind. An anonymous blogger leaked pieces of Belle's juvenile file. Another columnist branded Lila a sentimental amateur. One national opinion piece sneered, compassion cannot replace qualifications, aiming its barbs squarely at Adrian's trust in her. Lila read every word, each cut burying a little deeper. Then one morning, a plain envelope arrived, no name, just block letters. Inside, a single sentence, you saved my daughter when I couldn't. Thank you. No signature, but enough to steady her. At breakfast, the twins bickered cheerfully over cereal, arguing whether orange juice counted as pancake syrup. Lila poured coffee, smiled despite the storm, humming in the background. This was worth burning for. Adrian folded his newspaper, watching her. carefully. "You're holding up," he said. "I have to," she replied. "Not just for them," he added quietly. "For you." She paused, then nodded. "Yeah, for me, too." Later, they pulled every mentor and volunteer into a staff meeting in the main room. Lila stood at the front, spine straight. "This shook us," she admitted, "but I won't apologize for why we exist. We didn't create this center to look virtuous. We built it because kids fall through cracks, and we decided to stand there. We catch who we can. We get it wrong sometimes, but we stay." Dr. Collins rose first. "We're with you," she said. Nods followed, murmurs of "always" and "we're not going anywhere." Loyalty rippled through the space. That night, Lila walked the hallways alone. Walls were lined with art, quotes from kids, snapshots of chaotic family dinners. She stopped at one photo. Noah and Nico flanking Belle, all three mid-laugh, a single word written beneath, "home." In the East Wing, she found Belle working on a new mural, a city skyline with golden windows glowing against indigo sky. "You're still up," Lila said softly. Belle shrugged. "Can't sleep. My brain's loud." "You good?" Lila huffed a laugh. "Define good." Belle's expression turned serious. "People think because I spoke on camera, I'm suddenly healed. But I still snap for no reason. I still double-check everything. I still don't trust easily." Her voice frayed. Lila sat down beside her quietly. "You don't have to be finished to be free," Lila said. They sat in silence, listening to distant crickets outside. After a while, Belle asked, "Think I could ever talk at schools? About this stuff? About kids like me?" Lila smiled. "You just did," she said. "And yes, you'd be incredible." Belle's mouth twitched upward, pride flickering under the armor. "Then that's what I want. To be the person I needed back then." Lila nodded. "We'll figure it out together." The next morning, a call came from the State Child Welfare Committee. "We've been reviewing the Mercer-Bennett model," the representative said. "It's unconventional, but the outcomes are impressive. We'd like to visit, maybe adapt your framework elsewhere." Lila went still. "You're saying you want to expand?" she asked. "We're saying," the voice replied, "we want to learn." When she hung up, she stared out the window, mind racing. The center was no longer just their project. It was becoming a blueprint. Later that week, Lila, Adrian, and Belle sat under the big oak with Noah and Nico, the air tasting like cinnamon and dry leaves. Noah read from a picture book, pausing to let Nico invent wildly wrong alternate endings. "I want to write a book someday," Nico announced, "about kids who fight the bad guys." Lila ruffled his hair. "Start with what's real," she said. "Truth makes the best stories." Adrian leaned back, his hand brushing hers lightly. She didn't pull away. The sun slid lower, casting gilded stripes through the branches. They were all a little cracked, a little rebuilt, held together by shared hurt and stubborn hope, but together they felt solid, not flawless, strong. Lila remembered reading about kintsugi once, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with veins of gold, turning damage into something beautiful. That's what they were doing here, she thought. Not hiding fractures, but filling them with light and meaning. Lila didn't recognize the man at the front desk when she walked into the center one afternoon. He was thin, weathered, in a scuffed tan blazer, hovering like he might bolt any second. His posture tugged at forgotten memories. Dr. Collins waved Lila over. "He asked for you. Didn't give a name." Lila approached slowly. "Can I help you?" The man lifted his head, and 20 years snapped into focus. "Lila," he rasped. It's me, your father." Time stuttered. Her blood roared in her ears and then went oddly quiet. "You don't get to say my name," she said, voice low. "I know," he blurted, tugging off his cap. His hair had gone gray, eyes ringed with regret. "I shouldn't be here. But I saw the press conference. I saw you, and I had to come." People moved behind her, kids laughing, a mentor calling instructions, but everything felt distant. Adrian arrived, reading her tension instantly. "Is this man bothering you?" Lila couldn't answer right away. "Yes, no, I don't know," she managed. Adrian nodded once. "I'll be nearby," he said, retreating, but not far. "I'm not here to wreck anything," her father said. "I don't want money or favors. I just wanted to see if you're okay." Lila exhaled slowly, the breath sharp. "You left when I was 11, when Mom unraveled and everything collapsed." "I was sick," he whispered, "addicted, lost. I didn't know how to stay." "That's not an excuse," she said. "It's context, but it doesn't erase anything." He nodded, shoulders folding inward. "I missed your life." "You surrendered it," she replied. Silence stretched. Then he pulled a worn photo from his pocket. A little girl in overalls, braids, scraped knees, clutching a sketchbook, squinting at the camera. Lila's breath snagged. "You left this on the porch the day I drove off," he said. "It was all I had of you." She remembered that day only in shards, but the picture hit like a punch of sunlight in H. "I'm trying now," he added. "Been sober 3 years. Working at a garage outside Baton Rouge. I see a counselor. I go to meetings." Lila crossed her arms. "So what do you want?" He swallowed. "Not forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I'm asking for grace." The word landed differently. Grace wasn't transactional. It couldn't be earned like a paycheck. It was a gift, given or withheld. "I can't promise forgiveness," Lila said slowly. He nodded. "I get that. But I can promise I won't hate you anymore," she added. "That's something." A single tear slipped down his cheek. "That's everything," he whispered. Lila didn't tell the twins that night. Or Belle. Or Marion. She tucked the encounter away like a fragile file she wasn't ready to read but couldn't throw out. She cooked dinner, helped Nico wrestle math homework, read 2 chapters of Noah's detective novel. Later, the house quiet, she sat in the sunroom with Adrian. "He came," she said. Adrian looked up. "Your dad?" She nodded. Talking to him felt like arguing with a ghost. "Do you want him back in your life?" Adrian asked gently. "I have no idea," she admitted. "But I wanted him to see me. That's all." Adrian squeezed her hand. "He saw you," he said. She rested her head on his shoulder, heart easing. 2 days later, Belle burst into Lila's office waving a flyer. "Check this out," she grinned. "My first speaking invite, a youth panel in Atlanta. They want me to talk about art and trust." Lila lit up. "That's huge. When?" "Next month," Belle said. "But I need a chaperone." Lila arched a brow. "You're asking me?" Belle smirked. "I trust you not to let me inhale 3 gas station burritos." Lila laughed. "Dubious logic. I might join you." Belle's grin softened into something vulnerable. "I'm nervous." "Good," Lila said. "Means it matters." Belle studied her with familiar guarded hope. "Thanks for seeing me. Before I did." Lila touched her shoulder. "That's what light does," she said. "It slips in through the cracks anyway." Something in Lila settled deeper. She realized healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant folding the broken pieces into a fuller story, choosing not to let them run the entire narrative. It meant becoming someone capable of forgiveness, not to excuse harm, but to free what came next. 6 months passed in a blur. The gardens at the Mercer estate overflowed with late spring blooms. The center thrummed with new programs. It wasn't flawless, but it thrived. A younger counselor, Mia, started weekly sessions with Belle, refining her voice. Noah skipped a grade and crushed spelling tests. Nico announced he'd design his own superhero team, complete with homemade capes and ridiculously long origin stories. And Lila, she watched like a seasoned gardener, tending fragile roots with stubborn hope. On a bright morning, Adrian gathered board and staff under the oak. A banner painted by the twins read, "1 year of staying." Lila arrived early, arranging blankets and lemonade glasses, fingers lingering on the banner's brushstrokes like they belonged. Guests clustered across the lawn. Dr. Collins, Aaron, Marcus, Marion, volunteers, agency partners. Kids spun in circles, clutching paper lanterns. Adrian began, voice steady. "When we named this center, we fused 2 unlikely forces, money and mercy. But the real miracle isn't structure. It's endurance. It's the choice to stay when no one's clapping." Marion surprised everyone by standing next. "My daughter has taught me more than I ever allowed myself to learn," she said. "I'm honored to be here, not as an observer but as someone still changing." Noah and Nico marched forward, each holding a gold-painted stone. They placed them at Lila's feet. "This one's gold because it's brave," Noah declared. "This one's gold because it doesn't leave," Nico whispered. Emotion climbed Lila's throat, hot and relentless. Aaron cleared his throat. "Our 6-month review shows higher school attendance, fewer behavioral incidents, more kids willing to ask for help," he said. Dr. Collins added, "We're expanding, 2 more sites." Marcus raised his glass. "To the woman who didn't ask to join a family, she built one." As the crowd drifted toward food, Belle approached Lila with her sketchbook. Inside, a fresh drawing. 4 glowing trees, each unique, leaning inward like they supported something larger together. Beneath, in Belle's messy handwriting, "This is what growing looks like." Lila kissed her cheek. The sun dipped, stretching shadows across the grass. The twins ran off to play tag. Marion hovered beside Lila under the oak. "I'm proud," Marion said quietly, eyes on the stacked gold rocks. "Pride's different than forgiveness," Lila replied. "But you're here." Marion squeezed her hand. "And I'm not going anywhere." Adrian joined them, looping an arm around both women. "Let's plant something," he suggested. "New flower bed, maybe roses." Lila smiled. "Only if we promise to actually tend it." He laughed. "Deal." That evening, Simon brought lemonade refills to the patio. Children's laughter drifted over the lawn, blending with the scent of jasmine as dusk settled. Later, when the crowd thinned and the center quieted, Adrian found Lila in the sunroom with Noah. She and Noah were drafting community rules in bright markers. Trust, kindness, courage, show up. Adrian closed the door behind him. "I've been meaning to ask," he said. "Would you marry me?" It didn't sound like a grand speech, more like a promise. Lila stared, stunned not by what he asked but when, in the soft middle of an ordinary evening. She shut the sketchbook and pressed it to her chest. "Yes," she said slowly, "as long as you know I'm a work in progress." Adrian brushed a strand of hair from her face. So am I, he replied. But we're better at growing together. Outside, the oak leaves rustled, as if offering ancient approval. Healing, she thought, had become something they'd hand down like an inheritance. By the time the Mercer Bennett Center opened its second location in Bridgeport, spring had tipped into full bloom. The ribbon cutting was simple, intentional. Kids from the original site held hand-painted signs, "Hope grows here. Second chances live." Neighbors lined the sidewalk, curious. Bees drifted between daisies planted in recycled tins. Lila spoke to the small crowd, sunlight threading through her hair. "We started this place to prove staying matters," she said. "Today, we're saying healing deserves movement, too. Not just roots, but roots." Cameras recorded, but Adrian focused on the families behind the lens, the ones who needed proof. This wasn't another empty promise. After interviews, Lila wandered behind the building, where volunteers hung banners and set up craft tables. Marion appeared with lemon bars. She passed Lila a square and a bottle of water. Lila took a bite. "These are dangerous," she joked. Marion chuckled, like this place, comforting in all the right ways. "Want to walk the garden?" Lila asked. They strolled among young rose bushes. Marion paused at a sapling dedicated to Noah and Nico. Its leaves fluttered in a breeze, smelling of pollen and possibility. "I planted this," Lila said. "So any kid who feels alone knows you can root even in rough ground." Marion touched a branch. "You've grown deep roots," she murmured. That afternoon, inside the new community room, staff gathered for training. Dr. Collins welcomed them warmly. Belle sketched workshop ideas while Aaron organized resources. Local hires filled the tables, hopeful faces ready to learn. Adrian slipped in, whispering to Lila, "You've shifted more lives than you know," he said. She smiled. "We're just getting started." Later, she and Belle toured the not-yet-finished wing where future therapy rooms basked beneath skylights. Belle stopped at a window overlooking the road, expression thoughtful. "So many roads out there," she said. "I used to think none led home." Lila joined her at the glass. "Home's more than walls," she said. "It's what we build each other into." Belle nodded. "Then I'm building it, too." That evening, Adrian hosted a simple dinner for the core team, kids included, beneath string lights in the courtyard. Platters of roasted vegetables, herb chicken, rice, and bowls of strawberries filled the tables. Noah said a polite thank you as he passed bread. Nico taught a volunteer how to fold napkins into tiny airplanes. Belle wandered with her sketchbook, then slid into conversation, dramatizing a disastrous science experiment that had everyone doubled over. Adrian lifted his glass of lemonade. "To staying, to building, to deeper roots." Lila raised hers. "And to wings wide enough to lift others," she added. Glasses clinked on shared promises. When most guests drifted away, Adrian led Lila into the garden beds. Fireflies flickered awake. He knelt, digging into the soil with his fingers. He planted a cutting from a rosebush beside the original sapling, their roots brushing. "This is our vow," he said. Lila knelt beside him. "We keep tending it, weekly, especially when it's inconvenient." He nodded. "Every week," he promised. Noah and Nico appeared with a flashlight, standing solemnly as if at a ceremony. They shone the beam over the new root. "Mom, that's cool," Noah whispered. Adrian glanced at Lila, then at the boys. "Thank you," he said quietly, and meant everything. That night, Lila paused outside the twins' bedroom. Adrian tucked Nico in, smoothing his blanket, then brushed Noah's hair back before flipping off the lamp. She leaned against the hallway wall. Adrian joined her, voice gentle. "You're still staying, right?" She looked into the dim room and smiled. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. He nodded. She rested her head on his shoulder. Outside, the newly planted rose root settled into the soil. The sapling above it waited to push out new leaves. It started with another letter, typed anonymous, postmarked from a town in upstate New York. Plain white envelope. No return address. Inside, 5 stark words in clean black type. "She's not who you think." Adrian read it twice, jaw tightening. He folded the paper and slid it into his jacket. He said nothing to Lila that night or the next, but she sensed the subtle shift, the way his thoughts pulled inward. Shadows had stalked them before. This felt pointed. The following morning, while Lila supervised art time, Adrian sat alone in his office, staring at his laptop. One name kept circling his mind. Terrence Morrow, a former associate who'd bristled at Adrian's pivot toward philanthropy, always mocking his savior complex. Terrence had tossed out thinly veiled threats in the past, but this note dripped malice. Adrian opened a secure browser, digging. He found a small blog on an obscure forum. It didn't name Lila outright, but the barbs were obvious. Phrases like manufactured sob story and trauma branding flashed on the screen. Adrian clicked away, disgusted, but the poison lingered. He looked out the window, saw Lila in the garden with Belle, both laughing about something trivial, utterly unaware of new shadows. That night, over dinner, he asked, "Did you ever use another name?" Lila frowned. "What?" "Before Lila Bennett," he clarified. "Legally or otherwise?" She set her fork down. "Why are you asking?" He hesitated. "I got a letter suggesting you're hiding something." "Do you believe it?" she asked. His expression was conflicted, not condemning. "I believe you," he said. "But I needed to ask." Lila inhaled sharply. "I was Lila Simmons until 18. Then I took my grandmother's name, Bennett. My father didn't earn that right." Adrian nodded, shame prickling his skin. "I'm sorry. I'm not ashamed of who I was," she said. "I'm furious someone thinks my past is ammunition." Later, she showed Belle the letter. Belle read it and snorted. "Whoever wrote this is scared of what we've built," she said. Days later, a local news segment aired, asking pointed questions about background checks and donor transparency. They flashed Lila's picture on screen with captions like "Mysterious Rise" and "Guardian of Troubled Youth." Lila clicked the TV off. She didn't flinch, but sleep stayed stubbornly out of reach. Adrian reached for her hand in bed. "I'll loop in the lawyers, PR, everyone," he said. She nodded. "We always knew something like this could happen. Doesn't make it fair," he muttered. "No," she said, "but it's familiar." 3 days later, Lila addressed the entire staff in the main hall. "No cameras, no outsiders. I'm not spending my life justifying my right to help," she said. "But I will defend this place fiercely. If they swing at me, fine. But they don't get to raise what we've built." Dr. Collins spoke up. "Let us handle the public narrative. You guard the mission." Aaron promised tighter security. Belle handed Lila a new drawing, her holding a lantern. In the sketch, hands reached toward Lila from a dark hallway. Underneath, Belle had written, "Keep walking. We're behind you." That night, Lila walked the original center's corridors alone again. At the entrance, Adrian pulled up, stepping out with a folder. "Your background checks, old records." Everything we have on file, he said, lifting the folder. Clean as a whistle. Lila raised a brow. You doubted that? Not for a second, he said. But I needed proof ready for anyone else. She stepped toward him. And what do you know, Adrian Mercer? She asked. He smiled faintly. That your past doesn't make you dangerous, it makes you powerful. They stood together on the porch as the wind rustled the "Hope Lives Here" banner. Lila nodded. Then let's remind them why. Inside, the center glowed against the dark, a lighthouse, unwavering. Lila understood suddenly. Storms didn't always come to knock everything down. Sometimes they swept the air clean, so something stronger could take root where fear used to live. The season turned, and the first snowfall wrapped the Mercer estate in quiet white. Branches glittered, pathways disappeared beneath powder. Lila watched from an upstairs window, hands wrapped around a hot mug, letting the hush seep into her bones. Investigations had cleared them. Donors had doubled down. Local coverage had swung from suspicion to cautious admiration. But unease remained, like an echo beneath holiday music. Peace, Lila realized, wasn't just granted. It had to be chosen, guarded. She headed downstairs and found Adrian at the mantel, sorting holiday cards. Framed photos lined the shelf. Messy art walls, kids in superhero capes, snapshots of chaotic dinners. He held up one handmade card from the twins. 2 parents, 2 trees, 4 stick figures. We love you, it read. Something within her shifted. Less fragile now, more anchored. Adrian brushed her fingers lightly. How are you really? He asked. Lila studied the card, then answered, honestly. I've been thinking about those storms, she said, about how we respond. Adrian listened. I don't want to erase what's happened, she continued. I want to honor it, mark it. He tilted his head. How? Let's build a space at the center, she said. Not just for happy endings, but for scars. Somewhere, people can leave artifacts of what they survived. Adrian's eyes warmed. Like a hall of resilience, he said. Lila's smile sparked. Exactly that, he nodded. I'll fund it. We design it together. Over the next week, Lila and Belle gathered submissions. Teens brought paintings, scribbled poems, anonymous notes. One canvas showed a masked figure with gold light seeping from cracks. Another piece was a poem titled, I stood up again after standing felt wrong. Volunteers strung soft lights along the walls. On opening day, the newly cleared wing glowed. Families, staff, and reporters filtered in, voices soft. Kayla, a teen who'd once been terrified to speak, shared an essay about choosing not to disappear. People listened like every word mattered. Adrian stepped forward. This gallery is our announcement to the world. Trauma won't silence people here, he said. These stories aren't chains, they're pathways. Someone asked the twins to say something. They exchanged a nervous look before stepping forward. Nico held up a jar of small stones. We drew these, he said. They cracked inside, but were still gold, so we made them gold on the outside too. Lila's throat burned. That's what kintsugi does, she said. It celebrates broken places. It reminds us broken doesn't mean worthless. It means art. Applause rippled gently. Afterward, Belle tugged Lila aside. I want to add my journal from when I first came, she whispered. Not all of it, just a few pages. Lila hugged her. Thank you, she said. Nearby, Marion and Adrian watched, hands linked. Later, at dinner, the family scorched gingerbread and played loud board games. Adrian chased Nico around the oak with a flashlight, while Noah read an old mystery aloud to Marion. Lila watched them, remembering midnight meltdowns, hospital beeps, legal battles. They'd walk through storms and accusations and old ghosts. But this noisy, imperfect life was something they'd built themselves, not flawless but honest, not safe from pain but rooted. After the boys were down, Adrian slipped an envelope across the coffee table. Inside, an invitation. Statewide Youth Trauma Conference. Keynote panel. Belle Harris. Lila looked at the empty spot beside her name. Adrian cleared his throat. Would you share the stage with her? Lila thought of lightning, of lanterns and halls, of Belle's trembling first day. She nodded. Of course, she said. Adrian smiled, relief unwinding inside him. They leaned together on the couch as snow feathered past the window. Healing, she thought, wasn't erasing storms. It was gilding the aftermath. Spring rolled across Connecticut in slow, lush waves. At the trauma-informed youth conference in Hartford, the auditorium buzzed. Social workers, teachers, caseworkers, teens, they'd all come to hear not just theory, but lived experience. On stage, Lila and Belle sat side by side. Behind them, a giant projection of Belle's Bird-Breaking Chains mural glowed. Adrian and Noah sat in the front row, Noah clutching a sketchbook showing 4 figures under a sunrise. The moderator introduced them as a story of loyalty, resilience, and being seen. They spoke about the early clashes, about slammed doors and stubborn staying, about how healing often looked like very bad days, plus one person who refused to leave. They answered questions about training survivors as mentors, about balancing boundaries with radical empathy. The applause built slowly, then thundered. Later, driving home, Lila peeked back at the sleeping twins, quilts pulled to their chins. The Mercer estate lights shimmered ahead. Inside those walls, forts waited, roses climbed, laughter echoed, and healing kept shining, persistent and bright. The people who stay can save a family. If you've lived long enough to watch loved ones drift away, through grief, pride, or plain exhaustion, you know this. Some houses look perfect from the curb, yet feel colder than a January wind once you step inside. Adrian Mercer had money, staff, and a mansion with more rooms than a person needs, but none of that could quiet 2 frightened 6-year-olds at 2 a.m. What did? A steady woman who sat down, lowered her voice, and stayed. Lila didn't fix the boys with a fancy degree or a shiny program. She offered the oldest medicine in the world, presence. For older readers, it's a reminder, we don't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes the bravest thing is simply not leaving. Apologies mean nothing without changed behavior. Then comes the moment that turns your stomach, the slap. Many of you were raised in a time when anger got excused as stress or a hard man having a hard day. But there's no excuse. Adrian's redemption doesn't begin when he feels shame. It begins when he changes the rules. No cameras, dinners at the table, no yelling near bedtime, and accountability with real consequences. That's the lesson. If someone truly wants to be better, you won't just hear regret. You'll see new habits day after day like clockwork. Healing becomes real when it spreads beyond your front door. What makes this story hit deeper is that it doesn't stop at one family. Lila and Adrian build something for other wounded kids, a place that treats trauma like a broken heirloom you repair with care, not something you hide in a closet. For those of us in our later years, that's legacy. Not the size of the house, but the size of the shelter you create for others. Because in the end, the life that matters most is the one where When it gets inconvenient, you still show up. After hearing Lila's story, I'd love to hear your perspective. Have you ever been the person who stayed when everyone else walked away, or did someone stay for you when life got dark? What did that change in your heart, your family, or your future? Drop your story in the comments so we can learn from each other, especially those of you who've seen decades of life and know what resilience really costs. If this message meant something to you, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.